everything vanished in a single night. Not slowly, not over years, not in a way you could prepare for or escape. One night the lights went out. The next morning the cities were empty. The people were gone. The animals had fled. Even the birds had abandoned their nests. And what's terrifying is that we have proof this happened. Multiple times. Across the entire world. And every single time, the same thing is carved into the stone. The same warning. The same symbol. The same name whispered in languages that shouldn't have known each other existed. Ghidorah. But here's the part that will keep you up at night. The historians know. They've always known. And they've spent the last 70 years making sure you didn't find out. Let me show you the evidence they buried. Let's start in Mesopotamia, 2200 BC. This wasn't some primitive tribe. The Akkadian Empire was one of the most advanced civilizations on Earth. They had writing. They had mathematics. They had armies. They had organization that would rival modern nations. Sargon of Akkad had just unified the region into a superpower. Everything was stable. Everything was growing. And then something changed. The clay tablets started appearing. Desperate, frantic, written by priests who were terrified. Not religiously terrified, physically terrified. The kind of fear you feel when you've seen something that shouldn't exist. Tablet after tablet describing something that came from above. From the sky. It had 3 heads. Massive wings. The voice of it, they described it as a sound that made your bones vibrate, that made you want to stop breathing. They called it the destroyer of the third sky. But that wasn't the name that made the archaeologists go pale when they translated it. They found another name, scratched repeatedly into the stone like someone was writing it over and over again, getting more frantic each time. The same word. Over and over. Ghidorah. 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 Within a generation, the Akkadian Empire vanished. Not defeated, not invaded in any conventional sense. The infrastructure collapsed, the population scattered, the cities were simply abandoned. And the few records that survived described the same thing: the 3-headed creature had come. It had destroyed. And when it left, there was nothing left to rebuild. The historians called it a mystery. Climate change, they suggested. Drought, they claimed. Invasion from the north. They proposed anything, literally anything, except what the evidence actually showed. But that wasn't the only place. Greece, 1200 BC. This is where it gets impossible to ignore. The Bronze Age civilizations weren't primitive. Mycenae, Knossos, Athens. These were sophisticated societies with art, literature, advanced construction techniques. They were thriving. They were expanding. Archaeologists have found evidence of trade networks, complex social hierarchies, monumental architecture. These were real civilizations. And then they all collapsed at the same time. Within roughly 50 years, every major Bronze Age civilization in the Mediterranean went dark. Completely dark. Historians still don't know why. The artwork. In 1967, a team of archaeologists in Crete discovered something they shouldn't have found. A series of murals painted directly into temple walls. Images of a creature with 3 massive heads. Wings spread so wide they covered the entire wall. And beneath the image, the same symbol repeated dozens of times. The symbol for destruction. One researcher, Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, analyzed the murals carefully. She traced the same symbol across different sites, different islands, different cities that had no contact with each other. The symbol was identical. The proportions were identical. The image of the 3-headed creature was drawn with such precision and detail that it could only have been based on something real that multiple people had actually seen. She published her findings in 1970. By 1971, she had lost her university position. She published one more article, then nothing. She died in obscurity in 1995. Nobody talks about her research anymore. But the evidence kept appearing. Japan, the Edo period. Official government records, not myths, not folklore, but actual administrative documents, described the three-headed dragon from above descending on provinces and devastating them completely. These weren't spiritual metaphors. These were reports filed by officials who witnessed something concrete and terrifying. Entire monasteries were built as protection. Monks performed rituals daily, for decades, with the singular purpose of preventing the creature's return. Why would they do that for a myth? Why would an entire religious order dedicate their lives to fighting something that didn't exist? Because it was real, and it had done this before. Mesoamerica, the Maya, the Aztec. Both civilizations had prophecies about the three-headed serpent from the heavens. Not one prophecy, dozens, carved into stone, hidden in codices, painted on temple walls. The detail was too consistent, too widespread, too specific to be coincidence. The Aztecs even had a god dedicated to defeating it, a god whose only purpose was defense against Ghidorah's return. Why would an entire pantheon revolve around fighting a single creature unless that creature had already nearly destroyed them? Here's what changed everything. In 1963, a linguist named Richard Pettigrew was comparing ancient languages. He wasn't looking for anything unusual. He was just cataloging word similarities across different cultures. Etymology, historical linguistics, standard academic work. And then he found it, the word Ghidorah. It appeared in Babylonian texts, in Greek inscriptions, in Japanese documents, in Mayan codices, in Egyptian tomb paintings, all using the exact same word, the exact same pronunciation, the exact same meaning across thousands of years and thousands of miles. This is linguistically impossible. Words change over time. They evolve. They diverge. But this word remained identical, unchanged, in languages that had no contact with each other, in cultures separated by oceans and centuries. The word stayed exactly the same. Pettigrew realized what this meant. It wasn't a word that spread between cultures through trade or conquest. It wasn't a myth that evolved independently. This was something else entirely. This was a word that had been preserved exactly because the thing it described. Pettigrew published his research. Peer review. Validation. Everything looked perfect. Then he disappeared from academic life. Within 2 years, he was quietly removed from his position. The university claimed budget cuts. His research was never cited again. His papers were quietly removed from databases. Anyone who tried to build on his work faced the same treatment. Careers stalled. Publications rejected. Subtle, professional destruction. Someone didn't want this research to continue. Someone was protecting something. Because here's what the evidence actually shows when you piece it all together. This wasn't mythology that evolved differently in different places. This wasn't coincidence or parallel development. This was a historical record of the same event, documented by multiple civilizations across thousands of years. King Ghidorah is real, or at least, it was real. Multiple times. The three-headed creature in the sky, the destruction of entire civilizations, the aftermath where nothing remained, the warnings carved into stone for the next civilization that would inevitably encounter it. And here's the part that will haunt you. Every civilization that encountered Ghidorah believed they could survive. They built defenses. They created religious systems to appease it. They wrote warnings. They trained warriors. They prepared. And it didn't matter. Because Ghidorah didn't come to negotiate. It came to destroy. It came to erase. It came to remind whoever was watching that human achievement means nothing, that your cities are sand, that your armies are insects. The last recorded sighting of Ghidorah was in 1627. A Japanese province reported the creature appearing in the sky. Temples were evacuated. People fled, and then it vanished. The province was devastated, but the creature left. That was nearly 400 years ago. In the entire historical record, all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia, there has never been a gap this long between sightings. Never. The longest previous gap was 300 years. And in that 300-year period, people thought they were safe. They thought the threat had passed. They stopped preparing. And when it returned, they were defenseless. We're past that now. We're in unknown territory. Nobody knows what Ghidorah's pattern is. Nobody knows what triggers its return. And more terrifyingly, nobody in the modern academic world is even looking for it anymore. Because they've decided, collectively, deliberately, that it never existed. If you search for Ghidorah in historical databases, you'll find nothing. The research has been scrubbed. The evidence has been filed away. The warnings have been erased. And we're just living our lives, building our cities, creating our art, assuming we're safe. But what if we're wrong? What if the historians know something they're not telling us? What if they've seen the evidence and realized it means something is coming? What if the silence isn't because the threat is gone, but because they've decided there's nothing we can do about it anyway? What if, right now, in some archive somewhere, someone is reading a clay tablet or an ancient text, and they're realizing that the pattern is about to repeat, and they're making the same choice every other civilization made? To stay silent, to let you live in ignorance for as long as possible. Because when Ghidorah comes, and the evidence suggests it will, there will be nothing to do. No way to stop it. No defense that will work. All you'll be able to do is watch as everything crumbles. And then you'll understand. You'll understand why the Akkadians carved warnings into stone. You'll understand why the Greeks abandoned their cities. You'll understand why the Japanese built temples to gods of protection. You'll understand why every civilization tried so desperately to pass down a warning about something that seemed too impossible to be real. And you'll realize they were trying to prepare you for this moment. This moment right now, when you finally know the truth, and it's already too late. Ghidorah, 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 and Ghidorah.